Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Rails Board meeting. I am Renee Leyva, President of the Rails Board. I hereby call this meeting to order on Friday, November 22 at 1:01 p.m. Emily, could you please call roll?
Sure. Monica Caldecott.
Here.
Jean Carroll.
Here.
Jennifer Cutchall.
Here.
Newton Goyle.
Here.
Ben Gregory.
Here.
Diane Hollister.
Here.
Jennifer Hovanek. Amanda Kowalski.
Here.
Renee Leyva.
Here.
Billy Millivek.
Here.
Emily Porter.
Here.
Alex Vanstina.
Here.
Karen Voidick.
Here.
Catherine Yanikowski.
Here.
And we have a quorum.
Great, thank you, Emily. Next is the recognition of guests and announcements. We will take care of public comments at the same time. Let's start here in Burr Ridge with guests.
Monica Harris, Rails.
Sharon Swanson, Rails.
Joe Philippek, Rails.
Emily Feister Rails.
Mark Hatch Rails.
Diana Rush, Rails. Ann Slaughter, Rails.
Dan Boss from Rails.
Katie Bob, Rails.
Wesley Smith Rails.
Jonathan Leah Rails.
Laura Nemeth Rails.
All right, sounds like a party. Are there any public comments? Thank you. All right, now to the guests on Zoom.
We have Ryan Hubble and Sam Daly with Rails, and we have Megan Harmon from the Illinois State Library.
Emily, could you please read the names of the guests attending via Zoom?
Sorry, those were the people attending.
Yeah, I'm assuming so. All right, my apologies. Are there any other public comments at this time? All right, we're going to move on to the consent agenda. Adoption of the agenda, the Rails Board minutes of October 25th, 2024, regular meeting. Approval of the disbursements, October 2024. Does anyone wish to move any item from the consent agenda to the regular agenda for further discussion? Thank you. If there are no changes, may I have a motion and second to approve the consent agenda as presented? Motioned. First.
That Emily and Diane.
Correct. Emily, can you please call roll?
Jean Carroll.
Yes.
Jennifer Cutchall.
Yes.
Newton Goyle.
Yes.
Ben Gregory.
Yes.
Diane Hollister. Amanda Kowalski.
Yeah.
Billy Millivek.
Yeah.
Emily Porter.
Yes.
Alex Vanstina.
Yes.
Karen Voidick.
Yes.
Kathy Yanikowski.
Yes.
Monica Caldecott.
Yes.
Renee Leyva.
Yes. All right, next we have Sharon Swanson with the financial report. Hello, Sharon.
Hello, Renee. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. So you'll find the financial reports for the month of October in your packets. The October 31st general fund unassigned cash and investment balance of approximately 21.4 million would fund 18.1 months of budgeted fiscal year 2025 operations. This 18 months is the goal a long time ago that the board set as a minimum for our reserves. So I just wanted to also comment that this is our low point for the year. So the general fund payment of our APC grant, which is a little over 9.9 million, was vouchered with the Illinois State Comptroller's Office on November 4th. Judging from payment and timing of that payment this last year, we're expecting that before the end of this month to be received by us. So after this payment is received, this will increase our reserves without including November expenditures to 27.4 months of coverage. And this is assuming no other funds are received and nothing else is received. General fund revenues through October of approximately 2.76 million were approximately 808,000 below budget. This is primarily due to, of course, what I keep harping on every month, the EBSCO group purchase and the revision to the LSAP support grant for that open RSA position that was eliminated. And this, of course, is partially offset by investment income because we have had historically high rates, which are now starting to decrease. We had budgeted at a blended rate of 4.25% for this fiscal year. And interest rates are declining due to the Federal Reserve's actions to cut interest by 0.5 percentage point at their September meeting, and as well as a less aggressive cut at their November 7th meeting of 0.25 percentage point. So they're being very conservative right now, and they're attempting to balance inflation control with employment growth. So that's why they're less aggressive than expected cut. They're still planning to do a full percentage point cut over the course of 5, with the federal funds rate projected to end at 2.9% at the end of calendar year 2026. So they're projecting a soft landing. But as we all know, we just had our election process, And the results of the election could change all of this and all projections. So it's basically holding a crystal ball right now and trying to predict the future. So it could vary from all of this, but that's what they're projecting at this point. So I did include a graph in my report showing the federal funds rate and how that tracks against our 3 money market accounts. And how our 3 money market accounts track very closely with that rate. So we can expect our interest rates that we're getting to track very closely with the federal funds rate. Rails had also had unbudgeted grant revenue from the ongoing development and enhancement of L2 and the grant that we received from that from the state library, as well as the World Language Cataloging Services grant that we received from them. So we received funds on November 1st. They totaled, both of them combined, $213,625. These funds come from the state library's technology grants budget. So a separate pool of funds from the systems budget and the systems grants budget. So moving on to expenditures, Rails's general fund expenditures through October were nearly 5.67 million. And these were just over 1.39 million below budget. This is due to, of course, below budget EBSCO group purchase expenses, which offset the revenues above, the reimbursement revenues above, as well as below budget contractual services expenditures. This is the normal week's delay in paying our invoices from our delivery outsourcing vendor, as well as favorable gas prices, both for ourselves and for our delivery outsourcing vendor. And the temporary delay with paying our quarterly invoice from our Find More Illinois platform vendor, while invoice details are being verified and adjusted. Vehicle expenditures were also below budget, primarily from that delay between receiving and paying our fuel card invoice, as well as less of a need for repairs and maintenance due to our enormous project to replace our vehicles, which occurred over the course of last year and this year. And also waiting to brand all these vehicles as a group to save on costs for that. Supplies, postage, and printing expenditures were also below budget. This was due to lower than expected cost from the podcast room conversion to office space, as well as some budgeted projects that are in various stages of completion, including the display boards that we're purchasing for 4 of our service centers, as well as switches for all 4 of those service centers. And organization-wide headset replacements, since our headsets are at about that 5-year replacement point. And I did also just want to mention that during October, Rails placed a $20,587 deposit with the contractor to remodel the Cole Valley Conference Room, the adjoining kitchenette, and the staff kitchenette areas. This is to continue to address functionality issues for when we have member meetings out there, when we have board meetings, and also functionality issues for staff. And as part of that, funding that we are taking that we are allocating in our budget from the capital projects fund to try to get that building into better shape, since it's our other facility that we own. So on a side note, our auction did wrap up just recently, and we've had several folks pick up their things that they bid on and that they purchased. So we did manage to get rid of 12 vehicles. We earned about $11,000 from that. And from what I understand from Mark, who's sitting on the side of the room over there, we have another sale pending, potentially from a gentleman who purchased something in the auction already and was interested in another vehicle. So we may get rid of 13.
Wow.
We've seen yet. So we're still waiting the 13th and final box truck ordered during fiscal year 2024, as well as the 2 remaining box trucks that were budgeted for fiscal year 2025, just to keep you up to date about that. Do I hear any questions?
Did we sell the antique chair? There's a green one. No?
In our old folks' office with the separate bathroom.
Oh, man, it's an heirloom.
I know.
Yeah.
And get you a good price on it.
Yeah, I believe so. It comes with it comes with a box truck, right?
Leather conditioner for you too.
Oh, man, looking forward to it. All right.
Yes, Emily.
I had
We don't have to do budget and appropriations ordinances, right?
No, we do not.
For an instrumentality.
No, not for, it's not required under the Illinois Library Systems Act.
Like with the crazy interest income. That was always.
Good question.
All right, if there are no more questions or comments, we're going to move on to reports. And thank you, Sharon. Greatly appreciate it. I have no reports for the Rails president, and at this moment, your packet included the committee reports. Does anyone have any questions or comments regarding their contents?
Is it okay for people that are not in the committees to, I mean, I know that,
Absolutely.
To attend?
yeah,
Of course,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
like as board members, it won't like create a quorum situation. Or if we're,
We already have to have a quorum.
we have to.
We have to have a quorum for the committees anyway.
I'm just saying, like
It
from
would
the,
just be a
from
guess.
the board.
You're worried about having so many board members at a committee meeting that it is in some way violating the Open Meetings Act. But because we have a committee where we've already had to follow all the tenets of the Open Meetings Act to get it posted and some of these other pieces, it'll be.
It would just be counted as guest, not as a member of the committee. So it didn't affect the quorum.
I started that after I showed up to.
Never a problem. We, anytime you're interested in topics of discussion, or you just want to see what a committee's like in case you might want to serve on one in the following year, we definitely encourage you to attend.
And Emily would most definitely let you know if there's any issue anyway.
Immediately.
No.
Get out.
Oh, but that's a really good question though.
Yeah.
Everyone's encouraged to join any of the committee meetings. All of them are exciting. I know the policy committee is usually the one that's, their heads are rolling because there's so many things are going changes. So it's always fun. All right, if we don't have any more questions or comments in regards to the contents, we have Monica with the Rails monthly report.
Thank you, Renee. We are going to get kind of into the meat of the Rails report, but I had a couple of updates that I wanted to give you all before we get started on that. The first one is just a little bit of housekeeping. As you can probably see, for those of you who are here in Burridge with us, we have a little bit of a new setup. I want to thank our IT department for getting this moving for us. Our projector was at end of life, and we really started to look at other solutions to make sure that we still had a great setup to be used, and they were able to identify that these monitors are actually more cost effective than replacing the projector in many ways. But I do want to let you all know that, as you can see, the camera moves by noise, not by movement. So if you make any noise while you're in this room, including side conversations, the camera will find you. So we just want to give you a little bit of an update about that, just so you're aware as you move to the space. So thank you. I know you saw in my report that there was an ISLAC meeting. That's the Illinois State Libraries Advisory Council meeting that happened yesterday, and I hope to be able to update you a bit more at the meeting today. And so I'd like to do that first before we get into the rest of the meeting. I will say, first of all, I was very pleased that I have now been officially named to that committee. For the past bit, since I have been named Rails Executive Director, I've been invited to attend the committee, but it wasn't until just very recently that I've been able to be brought on as a voting member. So I'm very pleased about that. So this was my first meeting being able to attend. So I know many of you are aware that they had not yet made appointments since the inception of the committee. So that was a really great step, and I'm really positive about that. I do also want to share that several members of our team and also Renee were in attendance virtually at this meeting because the content of the meeting was of great interest to all of us. And so I may reach out and ask questions as questions come up about the contents of the meeting there. So on the agenda were a few things. One was a e-resources update, which is great. I know Megan is on the call, so I'm sure she'll give you some of the same updates we heard at that meeting, so I won't get into that too much. There was also some really exciting updates about a new grant opportunity that's going to be available for Illinois libraries very soon. It's to support the need for more collections that represent a community's multilingual needs. So a grant is going to be made available to libraries that would like to purchase more material reflexive supportive of their community. We don't have a lot of details about that right now, other than that there will be about $580,000 available. Max awards that can be given are up to $10,000 per library. Applications should be available beginning sometime in probably December, but will have to be closed by about January 30th. So it'll be a brief period of time that this application will be available. And from what I understand, from what was explained, they are going to have to be expended within this fiscal year, which means that funds will be made available perhaps as soon as March, and that they'll have to be spent out by the end of the fiscal year, which means a really quick turnaround. So we want to make sure that libraries are thinking about this as an opportunity. If there are collections that they're interested in, they want to think about what their ask might be in that application. Please do be thinking about that. I'm sure there's going to be more details available soon, but we were really excited to hear about that. And I think that's going to be of great value. Yes.
Monica, was that only for public libraries or for all libraries?
I did not hear anything in the context of the meeting that made me think this was only for public libraries, but I do think there will be more details coming out later. But we know there are needs across library types, so our hope is that there might be more available to all. But we'll know more soon, I know, and Megan may have more to share about that piece as well. The bulk of the conversation of the meeting was really related to a discussion of funding, and that is because the state library is sort of increasingly interested in what potentially could happen with some of the federal funding that is received by the Illinois State Library coming up in this next calendar year. So many of you may already know, but just in case you don't, I just kind of want to outline some of the funding that is received from IMLS, which is the Institute of Museum and Library Services. The state library receives about $5.75 million that was supposed to be received in this calendar year for the use of programs for next calendar year. They have not yet received that $5.75 million in funding this year. That's not ordinarily necessarily a call for concern. Last year, they received that funding in April. The year before, they received it in February. But there is a lot of conversation, as many of you may have heard, about the future of IMLS federally. And so there are some conversations that the state library wanted to have with this advisory council about prioritization if this money is not received by the state library. It's important to note that this is not just Illinois that is affected. This is all states. To our knowledge, no other state has received any of this funding so far. And so all libraries and state libraries in particular are going to be having these conversations about what the needs and future are of this funding. This funding or this group that is most affected by this, and those folks are represented by COSLA, are going to be having a meeting together on December 17th. Greg McCormick will be in attendance at that meeting and is going to report more at the January meeting about what they talk about at that. This issue is also going to be addressed at the upcoming legislative meetup. So for those of you who are going to be attending those, Cindy Robinson, Executive Director of the Illinois Library Association, presents on federal issues and will be talking about this issue. If you want to know a little bit more about what that IMLS funding covers, I just want to share that, as we said, the state library receives $5.75 million annually, but that includes $2.59 million for support of the regional library systems. That's why it's really important that you all know this piece as well. The way that that funding is sort of allocated is that it has to go towards specific projects. And so the way that that is received is towards delivery. So that's split kind of between the delivery that happens for the Heartland Library System as well as for us. There's an additional $3.16 million that is discretionary spending. But so for the purposes of the conversation that we had yesterday, it was really looking at kind of the whole bucket of what the Illinois State Library receives, not just that $5.75 million. So they were sort of looking at a $50 million amount of money that is received and really asking that group to prioritize what is most important to be received if this $5.75 million is not received. It was a really good and thoughtful conversation. I think that there was a lot of understanding that all of that money goes to important things and no one wants to see these cuts. But if there are cuts that happen, there were a few priorities specifically that were mentioned by the group. So no layoffs of staff should be a priority. So they really wanted to look at programs that specifically affected staff that depend on these funds in order to move forward. They talked about how the most support was really heard for continuing to receive the library system funding. So that's the funding that we receive. There's over $18 million in funding that's received by the Illinois State Library for Rails Heartland, and the Chicago Public Library as part of the System Act. So there was a lot of support for the systems and the work that they do that was expressed in that meeting. There was also a lot of support for continuing with the public library per capita, and then also talking books and Braille. A comment was made about how important that the statewide databases would be continuing to move forward. But it was a really good discussion that will continue into January. The state library will send a follow-up prior to the next ISLAC meeting in late January with some more information that was requested by the group, including information they wanted to know about certain programs, how they impact Illinois libraries. And again, it's really important to note that nothing has happened yet. This is really just a discussion that is meant to inform the Illinois State Library if they have to make decisions that they would have to move forward by on July 1st, that they know the priorities of the advisory council and they know how they intend to move forward. But before we get into the rest of the Rails report, I did want to just open it up for questions, see if there's anything else that you all are curious about, or if you attended the meeting and you have questions or comments, you're more than welcome to share.
Just to share, it was all positive feedback for the systems. So it's really good for us. Obviously, we have our talented Sharon here that, you know, she will already start, but this is more proactive rather than being reactive. It's making sure that if anything happens, but in reality, we just don't know anything yet. These are just early talks. These are just conversations. And obviously the goal is to make sure that all of our libraries are being served, and especially making sure that our talented staff remain here. So yeah, it was a good discussion. It was good.
Are there questions from this group? Well, I do want to encourage you, if you're going to be at the legislative meetups, definitely make sure, you know, that folks know about how important services that are provided by the systems are and what that funding goes towards. We really want to make sure that people are aware that this affects the systems as well as many programs across the state that are really important. And just being proactive about what that investment and things like delivery does. You guys know we had that value of library sheet that you saw that really showed things like if libraries had to purchase all of the material that goes out through delivery annually, it's $200 million for a $6.5 million investment. So, you know, your legislators are interested in things like that. They want to know about that support. And so I just want to make sure that you all are aware. If you have questions, if there's anything that you want to know, please reach out. I'm happy to do that. And I know the state library will report later and they may have more to share, but I did want to share that with you all because it was an important meeting yesterday.
And if you haven't registered for the legislative meeting, I hope you do. I know there's one that's already full. I'm trying to remember.
It's Gwen's Northwest Library. Yeah.
I mean, no, thank you so much for sharing that. And again, early talks, there's no concern, but it's just making sure that we're just ready for anything.
Thanks, Renee. I do want to share just a couple things from the general Rails report, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
Great, thank you.
More fun.
I did want to say we had a really great experience at the IEL annual conference in Tinley Park. Monica was there. I was really honored because I was able to accept their Crystal Honor Award at the awards ceremony. It was a great evening to be able to be there with our school library workers who are doing incredible work every single day with their students. So really a fun time. I always learn a lot at the IEL conference. Our staff put together an amazing booth and really had a great experience of being able to connect with so many folks. We also had staff who presented, including Joe Philippek and Jeanette Durucki. So it was a really great and positive experience. And we want to really thank IEL for allowing us to be there and to continue to be a big part of our organizations and partnership together.
I want to say just thank you for all the Rails staff who might have helped make the friendship bracelets. They were really cute.
Isn't that amazing?
Loved us. Great. Yeah, thank you.
Of course. I also want to share that in addition to our own Illinois legislative meetups, there is an upcoming program, Voices for Libraries 2025. That is maybe what some of you maybe used to know as the ALA Fly-In Days or the ALA Legislative Days. This is sort of the new version of that that will be focused on these federal issues for libraries. That's going to be coming up in March 5th and 6th. I have been invited to attend along with the Illinois Library Association delegation. Each state is limited limited to a certain number of people that are allowed to attend. So I'm really pleased to be a part of that, and we'll definitely be reporting back to you all on that experience. But it's an important year, and I'm really glad to be there. I also wanted to share a little bit about our LIRA renewal. This is a little bit more nuts and bolts, but this has to do with our property and casualty insurance. I serve on that executive committee along with our own Julie Milivek. And that group provides us with a lot of the insurance services that we have. We just got our renewal this year, and we received a 9% increase, which is less than we had budgeted for this year. So we're really pleased about that. And I was recently reelected to another 3-year term as the treasurer on the committee. So we'll continue to serve in that capacity as well. Again, wanted to encourage everybody to attend those library legislative meetups if you're able. And open it up for questions on anything that I just shared or anything in the Rails report.
Just a thank you to Monica from the LIRA board and membership for her willingness to continue as our treasurer. She does a great job. She's a working treasurer, and we benefit from her being on our executive committee. Thank you.
Okay, that's
All right, thank you so much. If there's no more questions or concerns, again, thanks, Monica, for the report. Next up is Kate Neha. Hello, Kate. How are you doing today?
Diana Rush is with me here too.
Hello, Diana. So they're from with Rails Consulting Continuing Education Report. There you go. It works.
Yay. Okay. Well, thanks for letting me talk to you all today. I'm Kate Niehoff. I'm the Director of Consulting and Continuing Education here. I've been with Rails since January. And before that, I was in public libraries for many, many years. And down at the end of the table is Diana Rush. She has been here, I want to say, for 5 years, Diana-ish?
5 or 6, yeah.
Diana also works as a librarian at the Joliet Junior College, so we're lucky to have her academic library perspective. Margie Schmidt is our other CE and consulting specialist. She couldn't be here today, but Margie has been with Rails for, I think, around 11 years. So she's got a lot of historical knowledge, which has been really helpful for us. So we're going to tell you about our department, and Diana is going to start us off by talking about continuing education.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for allowing us to speak today. I'd just like to take a few minutes to go over, kind of give you a peek at how we plan and implement our CE events. So from staying on top of library trends, assessing member feedback, and interdepartmental collaboration, we research and consider many factors when planning all of our CE events. And additionally, we work to be responsive to external factors affecting libraries, such as web accessibility and the Paid Leave for All Workers Act. We also work to have our events and training cover different library types and sizes, different needs for different size libraries, as well as the various types of work and staff within each library. So from cataloging and customer service to library leadership and youth programming, our goal is to provide training in as many facets of librarianship as we can. Finally, as part of our one of our strategic plan goals, we strive to keep EDIA as a consistent topic and look for programming that provides innovative ideas and expertise in advancing librarianship through the lens of EDIA. This combination of efforts provides information to our membership that keeps them future ready. Let's see. So since November 2023, the last 12 months, we have held 49 events at which we've nearly 3,500 people have attended the live presentation. And those sessions, the recordings have garnered over 8,500 views on the Rails CE YouTube channel. I would also like to mention that we work on collaborating with external agencies and external publics. Kate meets monthly with the CE coordinators at ILA and Illinois Heartland to exchange ideas and partner on initiatives such as Directors University. Finally, CE offers event grants twice a year for up to $2,000 that allow libraries or individual librarians to develop their own learning events. So while we accomplish a lot with our 3-person team, we can't always accomplish everything. And I just want to give you just a few highlights from the last 6 months. We've had really high registration numbers for the following webinars. Cataloging children's materials with Robin Fay. She's a metadata and cataloging expert from that has worked with the University of Georgia system. Amanda Jones, who is nationally recognized for her work against book banning and censorship, brought her story to the Rails membership last month. And last week, we had 267 people register for the Pushing Back on Misinformation, the Role of the Library. That was presented by Dr. Laura Saunders, who's the professor and associate dean at the School of Library and Information Sciences at Simmons University in Boston. And we're slowly integrating more in-person events as well, as COVID hopefully seems to be farther behind us. Last month we had NAMI mental health training here at Burr Ridge. The program was full, and I heard from many participants that it was some of the best training that they had ever taken part in. So thank you for that. I'm going to hand it back to Kate.
Right. So we are also responsible for answering consulting questions. So we are essentially the reference desk for librarians. When libraries have questions, they call Rails, they get transferred to us. And this kind of flies under the radar because Diana and I were just talking about how I don't think since I've started that we've had the same question twice. So it's a little bit hard to prepare for, but it can be anything from serving non-residents to records retention questions to suggestions for consultants. And we do our best to point them to resources or get them connected to the state library or get them connected to other libraries maybe who have been in the same situation as them. So we know that 2 of the areas where people always have a lot of questions are in HR and also legal questions around FOIA and OMA. So Rails subsidizes the cost of an HR source membership for libraries that have operating budgets below $1 million. And this is really, really helpful for them. They are libraries that cannot afford to hire somebody with HR expertise. And you can see from the number of 450 calls in the last year that this is a really well utilized resource. And then we also work with Ansel Glink to offer the FOIA and OMA hotline calls to all libraries in the state of Illinois. And I was at DU just this summer when a new director found out about this hotline. She hadn't known about it, and it was like Christmas morning for her. She was so excited. So that's really great too. And then our department is also responsible for staff training for Rails staff. This can take a lot of different shapes too. With EDI in our strategic plan, we've been really focused on that with training so that we can be really living those values of equity and belonging with everything we do. So we've done training for the whole staff. We've done training specific to supervisors. And then most recently, we did training for delivery staff that was really tailored towards like the unique role that they play in the organization. And we've got a big committee put together from across departments to start to plan the 2025 Staff in Service Day, hopefully coming up in May. And this is just a really great opportunity for us all to get together, strengthen our relationships when we can't always be in the same place as one another. And we'll probably do a little learning while we're at it too. And then we just wanted to give you guys an idea of what we're working on now. And I'm going to turn it over to Diana first because Diana is really responsible for Rails recently being accredited as a PDH provider in the state of Illinois.
Just a moment on that. After a lengthy process, we're finally approved by the Illinois State Board of Education to be an official professional development provider. And also lengthy was putting together the procedures because we need to keep everything for 6 years. So So it took a bit, but we are ready and going. We've already, I think, on our fourth webinar that we're offering PDH. And just first and foremost, like this allows us to serve school libraries and school librarians in a way that we never had before. So I'm really excited about it and I'm getting a lot of great feedback, so.
That deserves.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna, in 2025, start taking a little bit of a different approach with our, some of our CE. So most of what we do now is really passive. We're learning from experts and that is super, super valuable, but we know that, people also learn by doing and by, learning from one another. So we're gonna start, in January with something we've been calling our learning labs. And this is really more so that we can learn from each other, really get hands-on, and just make it kind of messy and informal. So we're going to have a Rails member library staff person just give a real quick introduction in January to AI for better workflows. And then we're all going to get our hands wet with ChatGPT and Claude and share tips, and it should be a lot of fun. And then also we are working on developing leadership training to hopefully launch in spring or shortly after of 2025. As you all know, there's not really been any state of Illinois leadership training for library staff since COVID, but we have a lot of members who are really interested in seeing this come back. So we are putting together the first iteration of this for early 2025, and then hoping we can build on that as time goes by, so that we can really start training and cultivating future library leaders. And that's all I had.
That's all?
That's it.
That's a lot. Yeah. Thank you so much, Kay and Diana. Looking forward to more. Just, yeah, the leadership one is interesting, just because I know ILA already does the Directors University. So just to see a program prior to that would be great. All right, does anyone have any questions or comments before we continue?
I'll just say, I'm thank you to my fellow board members for applauding that great PDH is really, will draw school librarians towards Rails CE. And I also definitely have noticed that the scheduling of the CE is much more conducive, I think, to a school librarian's schedule. You know, there's a lot of starts at 3:30 kind of things. And I really appreciate that, because I know I've been in this situation where I'd love to go to that thing, but I'm not available at 10:30 in the morning because I've got a room full of students. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah.
If somebody in membership has like a request for a workshop or ideas for.
Yeah, please send them our way. We love getting suggestions. So ce@railslibraries.org. Yeah.
And just a shout out to you guys for the wonderful programs you do. I am wearing my librarian Amanda Jones t-shirt, having been to the webinar. That was such a wonderful, wonderful program. So yeah, thank you for all that you do.
Thank you. All right.
Great. We're going to move on to the Illinois State Library report. We have Megan Harmon.
Hi.
Hello, Megan.
Hi. Everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Thanks for letting me share. I have some exciting updates about the statewide resources package. Susanna Jones and Ryan Franklin have actually talked to over 950 people about the EBSCO e-resources through online training and office hours, as well as conferences. So we're really excited about them getting the word out. EBSCO does comply with the Student Online Personal Protection Act, and the state library staff are working on getting a statement of compliance that can be used by the schools statewide. As far as statistics are going, we're seeing public libraries use increase from 212 to 317. And in the schools, use has increased from 206 to 438, with 9 new academics and 11 specials added. So I know they were thinking that statistics are going to fluctuate in the beginning with people doing test searches and that kind of thing. So we're hoping as promotion continues that more and more people are going to use this fabulous resource. And feedback was really good at the meeting, I thought. So the next phase will include following up with libraries, finalizing the ISL website, and marketing the database to the general public. Digital and print promotional materials are being provided by EBSCO and the ISL. Another update is that school grants are currently under review. We have identified 41 school districts this year who have received a grant. They received a grant last year, but they did not apply this year. We're currently uncertain if that has to do with the anti-book banning legislation or if this represents library school closures. Historically, we find that this number does actually fluctuate from year to year. So we are working on finding that out, and results of our inquiry will be reported to ISLAC and the systems. Next update, the application for public library per capita just opened. Grants of up to 1.475 per person based on population and the library service area are awarded annually to the qualified Illinois public libraries. The Equalization Aid Grant provides additional support to help public libraries with low library tax base to ensure a minimum level of funding for library services is achieved. The deadline to apply is January 30th. Applications for the FY25 Public Library Construction Grant Program are also open to libraries, and that deadline is January 15th. Monica did a great job of sharing the ISLAC discussion in regards to federal funding, and I think I would just reiterate that there will be a meeting on December 17th to discuss that further, and hopefully we will know more then. And finally, I would just like to extend Thanksgiving wishes from the state librarian and the state library. And thanks for letting me share.
Does anyone have any questions or comments? No? Well, look, we all wish the state library and all its staff, and obviously Greg, a really good Turkey Day, really good Thanksgiving. All right. Thank you so much.
Bye, guys.
I would not want to be Greg right now. Oh, you're still there. All right, good. We're gonna move on to new business. Oh, go ahead.
Follow up. You mentioned that in the past, this IMLS, or maybe I got those mixed up.
Got it.
Might come in the past has come in February or March, but we're way past February or March. So are you saying
Of the following.
year?
Yes. Good question.
Okay, all right.
Yes, and one thing that was mentioned was that there may be some additional budget discussions happening at the federal level in March. So they may be waiting until after those discussions happen until they're putting money out. So we don't know. And as Megan said, they'll tell us more through ALA at that December 17th.
Okay.
All right, if there are no further questions or concerns, we'll move on to new business. We have Rails closing for staff in-service day. Monica?
Yes, thank you. And so you just saw Kate's great presentation about all the wonderful things that our CE and consulting group does, and that includes a lot of planning that goes into the staff in-service day. Our last staff in-service day was on October 11th, 2023. That was actually our first in-person in-service day since COVID, but we wanted to get back onto a annual schedule. We are looking to May and May 15th specifically to be able to have a dedicated staff learning day. As many of you know, we are spread across 27,000 square miles in 5 different locations. This is the one day where everybody can get together in one place. It's an opportunity for our entire delivery staff, especially to have one meeting all together. And we also get a chance as a staff to get to know all of each other, you know, regardless of what department that you work in, and have a day of learning together. So I did want to ask the board to consider allowing us to close on May 15th for the day. That means there will be no delivery and all of our locations will be closed just so all of our staff can come together for that day of learning. And happy to answer any questions that you might.
I will happily make that motion.
Second. All right, guys, thank you. Emily, did you get that? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, the motion carries. Thank you so much. Look at that. We're gonna move on to Monica again with leadership training for Illinois libraries. Monica, you have the floor.
Thank you. This is what I was hoping could be a robust discussion with this group because of some things that we're working on. So again, as Kate mentioned, we're working on a leadership program. This is something that has been recommended, requested really frequently since I began as executive director in February 2023. When I first started, I did a lot of meetings around our service area and talked to a lot of folks about what they wanted. And this is one of the things we heard most often. This request most often comes from public libraries that are really missing an opportunity. And some of you who've been around a while may remember things like Synergy or Elevate, like these kind of programs that were really focused on leadership development rather than something like Directors University, which is really focused on the particulars of a particular job, like being a library director. This is more generally focused on leadership development. But as we look towards a leadership program that may be our own, we have some questions about how some of that might be developed. You all are really leaders in this area. You represent a wide geographic range across Rails. You also represent, you know, a lot of different library types. And so I did ask you in your packet to consider some specific questions that I hoped we could talk about today. But that said, if you have other things that you would like to add to the conversation or comments, we would appreciate it. Kate is here to listen. Diana's here to listen. I know Joe and I will be listening as we kind of consider how to move some of these things forward within what we have. We do have $10,000 budgeted this year towards this development. That may take more as we get into these discussions, a phase of like focus groups and discussion around how we move something into next year, or it might just be a kind of low cost version of something that might have been done before. And so we have a lot of things to consider. But I thought maybe I would just start our discussion by posing some of these questions that were in your packet and opening it up for some discussion with you here. But as I said, if you have other things to add, we'll certainly have time for that at the end of the discussion. So anything before we get started? Okay, well then I'll start with our first question, which are, what do you think the challenges are to becoming a library leader in Illinois? Take the floor, Emily.
I mean, just speaking for myself, but I went to library school to be a librarian and became a director and realized that I was not trained to be a director. We didn't have any management training. We didn't have any facilities training. We didn't have any legal training, HR. I mean, there's a lot of pieces of being in administration in particular that it's just hard to get access to that level of training until you're already in it. And then it's a little too late.
Also the aspect of how to lead from any position in a library. We have a lot of potential leaders out there in our libraries who again, they don't know where to start. And they're, you know, helping them come along. And I think identifying who might have the potential is something that we all need to be involved in.
I would say that developing kind of a connection and I don't know, like a professional learning community is really important. I don't know if that falls under challenges or what skills, but really knowing, oftentimes as librarians, especially as school librarians, you're by yourself. And so you don't know what from what. And so you learn a lot about being a leader by meeting other people who are in similar positions and seeing the things that work for them and hearing their stories and at least having somebody to kind of bounce things off of, like, this is what I think I might do. Like, how would you handle that in your position? So I think sort of tapping into a professional development group is a challenge and a skill and a necessary thing.
To Emily's point about the training not being available till you're already in the position, I think there's also an element of that mystifies the job. And so people think, well, I'm not qualified to move up because I don't have that training. And you talk to those people and say, just as much training as most people do that end up in that job, but they're
Like empowering our staff to
ask questions, understand what it looks like to be in those positions or what those jobs actually entail.
or to start down the road of getting training for those positions that they might not have access to at that point, but maybe would inspire them to move on and library lead.
Just to add, and I think I'm gonna repeat what Monica already stated, time. A lot of these people that are potential leaders, they might have a full-time job that just the time doesn't work with them. And then depending also on basic levels is, are you doing this through YouTube channel or are you gonna treat it as iLead where they have its own software and its own central system where you're actually able to go into and everything's recorded? Because a lot of the times is a lot of school librarians who want to lead or who want to even go into public school or public libraries need a format, need to be formatted, need to be guided through to make sure as to what's step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, instead of, hey, go to our YouTube channel, click the video. And it's like you not guidance, because a lot, like everyone I've said, there's no guidance there. There's nothing there. So if it was treated almost like an actual educational course where you already know what you're going to be taught, what's the end result, and you might get like a small certificate stating like, hey, you're worthy enough now. But I think at the end of the day, it's time and how are we implementing? If we're going to take it seriously in regards to implementing it almost like iLead, then making sure that we're starting there, almost like if you have you used, or Diana, Niche Academy? Yeah, so almost, are you gonna treat it as Niche Academy so that you can go in there and go into sections that you're able to learn? I think that's the biggest challenge is, once you're in, how deep in are you gonna go in and how serious are you gonna be?
I don't know if it's still relevant or if they're still doing it, but I know that when I became director at Byron, that was 2015. Just because I couldn't find anything locally. I ended up doing the Wisconsin Library Director Certification Program. And I don't know how amazing it was, but like something like that would be really great, just to have like a series that people could do on their own time.
Yeah.
And I do think since 2015, Directors University has come into play and there's been some really good,
That too, but I mean,
but this is
that's something
different.
that's something that you would have to spend time away from your library, and if you
Yeah.
can't do that, you can't do that.
Yeah.
This was all online.
Okay. Great.
I think it would be helpful for library directors to help inform those who are not library directors, how the love of libraries and why you go into the library field, like how that directly applies in the work that you do day to day. Because it can be very intimidating, I think, looking at the job of a library director and seeing how the librarian part of you is able to be alive throughout the day, much more than the politician and, the person with 8 bosses and, the financial components and the HR issues and all of that. And so I mean, I have so much respect for library directors, but I wonder sometimes if there's that question as to how much am I going to be able to do what I truly went into this field to do hands-on with my library degree. And, I know that there's an answer for every single library director as to how they do that, but it's not immediately obvious to everyone, I think, as to what the possible avenues are for still satisfying that desire to be a librarian.
Ways to ask questions too.
Yeah.
Nice people doing that. Yeah.
Things that crossed my mind, and I'm
not a working librarian or retired. But how does one who is in the rank and file has the desire to learn more, how does one surmount established decades-long foundation of friendship to have your voice be heard of what you want to do? But if you know that it's probably going to fall on deaf ears because there's already someone that's being rude, what do you do? What does a person do then?
It's like finding support to take the leap in tough situations.
Well, and I kind of had the same thing, but I was with what's the most pressing issue facing us? And I think it's developing a culture of mentorship and not just relying on the who knows who, but trying to embed that culture of mentorship throughout Rails and Heartland, and so that every single one of us, whether you're retired or a school library or an academic library, a public library, and whether you're a director or not, you're also looking for talent and maybe in the places that might be a little out of the way and willing to step up and provide some mentorship to give that person the little push to help them find that first step to becoming a leader, to finding what they need.
That's a great segue, I think, into that next question, which is, what do you think is the most pressing issue related to leadership development in our state?
I have something to just add to Julie.
Yeah.
If a library director is being a very good mentor and a lot of their staff, not everybody, but a lot of the staff that moves up tends to move on then to something bigger and better. And then you have the board of directors who thinks maybe the library director isn't doing a good job and they're all jumping ship. So it goes beyond just library staff. You know, you have to go down to the board of directors too, because how this looks for them as a mentor, it could be negative. Do you know?
I do,
And
yeah.
I don't know how to fix that, but
Exit interviews.
you're excited about, well, boards don't do the exit interviews.
No, but boards
Yeah.
could.
Yeah.
But it's also, I think, the director's job to make sure that they clarify as to why the person left and what they did for them.
Right.
At the end, I feel like as directors, we take pride when someone leaves to a better life, better position.
I do too.
We know for a
I
fact.
know people that don't,
And it's, some of you, I'm gonna age myself here, it's the Ruth Fakeless of the world. Ruth, she was a library director whose assistant director position turned over every 2 to 3 years on a regular basis because she was the person who was mentoring the next library director, and every single one of her assistant directors became a director 2 to 3 years, and her board knew because she told them that was what she was doing.
But it's also not just within one library. It's within like all the libraries in the state, like you might be mentoring someone in another library, it's not just within one library.
I love the mentoring thing though. Although, as a board member, I don't like to see the good people always leave, but I get it, and I'm happy for them, like you said.
That did just come up at my last board meeting at Thomas Ford. Another board member, who was not a librarian, but isn't this the second time that this position has opened? And the director did what Renee said. He explained that, we have so many staff here, there's only so many opportunities to move up within our library. And so we're very happy for them that they have gotten the experience they needed here and they're moving up. So it is important that the director explain.
Sometimes though, our board members are from the for-profit industry and they don't really understand
Yeah.
that, libraries share by nature.
Right.
And that we are bringing up the field as a
Right.
whole rather
Right.
than, and
Yeah.
It's hard to look past your notes.
It is important though
And things
that
like that.
directors know this so that they can use that tool of explaining.
So it is important that the director explain exactly
Yes.
what is happening.
Monica, can I ask you a question?
Yes,
To
ma'am.
help orient this conversation. When you say that you've heard about concerns about the development of leaders, are
Yeah.
you talking specifically about directorship and library, like someone running the library? Or are you talking about like folks stepping up to serve on ILA committees or at ALA? Are we talking about like a culture of leadership regardless of position, or are we talking about encouraging folks to move up?
So I think that's a great question, because what comes to us often is the question of directorship. It's when people are coming to Rails and saying, we really see that there seems to be a lot of turnover, or there's a lot of people retiring. We want to make sure there are people who are ready to take these positions for a lot of the reasons that Catherine outlined. Being a director is very different than being a librarian. Like, how do we find these and identify these people who are going to be great at being a director? But I'm also a firm believer that leadership at every level is possible. And there's a lot of really incredible leaders who don't necessarily want to be a library director. So part of the reason we wanted to have this conversation with you all is to identify like what is really important in the development of a program like this for Rails. Is it better to find something that is really more focused on leadership at every level, regardless of whether you want to be a director? Or is the need to have good library directors in Illinois so great that we should really be focusing on trying to find people who have those skills and can fill those roles? I don't have a great answer for it. Yeah.
Big conversation. I have to say from my side, I don't think most middle library directors are reimbursed or funded, or even have part of their deliverables. This person you identified sounds like a wonderful human being, and out of the goodness of their heart, they did all this incredible work. But wow, on top of their day job, that seems like a lot. And so to think about what you might want to propose for this leadership development, it may be, what does a stretch project look like? And how do you think about signing up for a stretch project if you don't have a mentor immediately in your neighborhood? And that might be simple enough to say, if I could do something bigger than myself, that puts me in a position to do something bigger later. Maybe a director, maybe a different type of librarian. And so that, I think you put that in a bread box, and that's not so overwhelming. Say, here's a stretch project. If I pick a stretch project, whatever that is, crisis management or re-indexing or something that we're thinning out our library in a different way, whatever you decide that to be.
Yeah.
If you make that choice, what does that imply, and what resources might you have to get that additional help to get it done? I'm not going to call it mentorship just yet. Maybe it's just a stretch project that you couldn't do in your current role. And I think that's the beginning of leadership. People will say, hey, I like doing this. It scratches an itch for me, and I can do it at any level.
Is Directors University open only to current directors?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that. I mean, because then to the point of how do you know if you want to do that thing, or how do you like, you know, and how it is said sometimes that certain types of people feel like they're not ready to apply for that next job because they don't have all the skills. And while somebody else might say, no, that's okay. Like I don't have the skills yet, but I could get them. So I don't know, if Directors University had like a pre or a, you know, like an up and coming kind of a component, then maybe you wouldn't have to recreate the wheel if you already have something that's pretty good that might fit the public library need. Just allow people who aren't in that position yet.
Well, and I think Directors University had like this very specific charge of meeting the needs of these people who ended up in these jobs and are like, I really need support, right, for this job, and they need each other. But then this other need has come up, right? That's like, how do we even get people there? How do we get the right people to be able to show up in those roles and find people who are aligned to this kind of a job?
Pretend you're a director university.
A day in the life of.
Day in the life of a director university. Yeah.
Want to be a director.
Yeah.
Directors hires.
We don't want directors only. We want other people. And so what I heard Monica say was, you want the skills to be available, but you want to not groom to director. And I worry that if you say this is open to everybody, this is literally leadership's only directors or else.
Yeah.
Well, in the suburbs, I feel like being a director is means a little bit different things than in the rural part of Illinois. I mean, there's not a lot of levels in a small public library. So you're either a librarian or a clerk or a director.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and in that kind of area where there aren't people that are gonna move like 3 counties over for a job definitely providing that support where library staff can take training, but they might not have any real reason to, other than like looking into the future.
And to Emily's point, I feel like if you are coming from a larger library, you're getting the middle steps. So maybe as a department head, you're getting some budget experience, you're getting some, you know, of the different skills that you'll need if you were to become a director. But if you're going from a library where there's no middle steps, you know, you're missing out on that opportunity.
I just want to make sure that we don't lose sight of these small libraries that are definitely siloed. Hard to get out of the house, hard to go for a weekend and, you know, in Springfield.
Yeah.
But I do have to say that I think we have some really good models in Synergy and Elevate that were former statewide leadership advancement programs that really did put forth, and as a former synergist and someone who had staff participate in Elevate, I think the thing that they both had in common that was most valuable to me, and that my the folks who have been on my staff who participated as well really found that the cohort and mentorship, because within each of those programs, you were broken into a smaller group, and there were 5 or 6 of you in your small group, and you had 2 mentors for your little group. And outside of those couple of weekends, you were also having a conference call or trying to get together. You know, in this day and age of Zoom, it would be much more effective to do these in-between meetings with your smaller cohort, where, you know, you would go to Synergy and you would be talking about leadership and what to do to become a leader, but they would also make you set your goals, and then you were accountable to your cohort, and you had the mentor there to make sure that you were applying the skills that you were learning along the way. And I think that those models were really good. And I think that even if we don't do it within the context of something that has that much larger in-person component, that if we can at least find a way to get people into those kinds of cohort and mentorship situations, that we could help, you know, maybe that's the add-on to the online classes that everybody does asynchronously.
That'd be like the cherry on top, because I think I took a director's university, and the one thing that I know for a fact, I don't know who I took the class with. I've never
Not do a good job at that.
So I don't know who I took the class with. I don't remember. I took the online portion, which is unfortunate because it was during COVID times. But that was the biggest thing that I got out of it, was that I didn't have any support afterwards. There was no one I can go to. So I reached out to the hiring firm that I was hired from to request, hey, more information on an extension that it's due in 3 days. Who do I go to? So I reached out to the person that I am. I reached out to the 3 local libraries that I knew, and we shared connections and communicate that way. And that was my way of saying, you know what, if I'm not going to give any support, I'm just going to create it myself, because I'm not going to wait. But that's the one thing with Directors University that I'm just like, I don't get that. It can be improved, but again, we could be that add-on and support Directors University to say, hey, we're here for you after you're done. We can support you. We have the staff here that can help you out.
Exactly. And I can tell you 20 years later, I can tell you exactly where all of my Synergy cohort is, and all their names and the names of our mentors who are both retired now. So.
And I think a component of that type of learning too, because there was ILead-U, and then there's Institute for School and Public Librarians. It's like this very intensive, immersive opportunity where you're there for days, and then you come back a few months later and you're there for more days. And you're like learning from 7 o'clock in the morning until midnight. You're working on together. So this is very unique situation where it's like you're in boot camp and you're pulling an all-nighter, and there is just a rapport and a closeness that comes with that exact type of work, the intensity of that work. And you feel like you've gone through a very difficult but very rewarding educational program by the time you're done with it. And, you know, I agree with you completely, Julie. The model was just right. You know,
I think Julie's great cohort idea could maybe hit Monica's last bullet point too. Like, how do you, if you wanted to target, maybe the main learning was similar, but then you're in a cohort with people who work in the same type of library as you are. And then that brings larger issues down to your, you know, to your specific setting.
Also had zones. I never understood why we got away from that. Because it was actually really great to have that regional component where you could get to know your neighbors in like kind of a natural way.
Zone 5 still meets.
Sure, now zone 5/7.
Plus. 5/7 plus. You began by saying, Monica,
To like encourage the
No, absolutely.
regional.
networking and the opportunity to develop those relationships, just like we are doing right now. And I did stay in touch with DU classmates, and I made like lifelong friends, LVC. And to one of the questions, like what has helped me most as a leader, it's definitely my colleagues and those relationships that I've developed. And Ruth Feckless, an inspiration for sure. I would like to, she's definitely inspired me career-wise, and I would like to follow in her footsteps this way. In lots of ways, very stylish.
To the cohort discussion, and I do feel like I came out of DU with a cohort, but before that, as a middle manager, I felt like we had roundtables, and I see a lot of the people that were at those roundtables with me have now moved up to directorship. And I think we kind of started a cohort at that level. We pushed each other, we answered each other's questions. And so again, I think we need to be looking a little earlier as well and starting those cohorts and starting that, you know, shared drive to move forward together. And not just look after the directorship.
I feel like there is a big elephant in the room though, when we're talking about developing library leaders. Who wants to do that right now?
Well, that's that challenges question. right?
Still me. I'm still here for it.
Even
If
with
not us,
Awake
who else?
Illinois and
Yes.
all of these scary elections that are coming up in April. I mean, it's just, I feel like, I have felt like the library world is very much on the defensive. Like we haven't been prepared. We are not as organized as our, what do you want to call them? Philosophical,
Detractors,
Yeah.
that's the word that I landed on.
like that. I mean, how do we prepare ourselves for that fight? That's a big component of it, especially right now.
Well, I think this is how you prepare. You know, we're talking about it now. We're trying to be more proactive now. It's a shame you had to be reactive to get it. But hopefully with anything that, you know, they come up with as a result of these talks and, you know, whatever you're doing, it'll be more proactive.
One of the things I'm feeling right now, and I'm going to apologize to all of you because many of you have heard this from me before. And it's about the mentorship cohort. And I'm not asking a question. It's like some people are pretty much up in an isolation. Not all libraries will give you the mentorship. I mean, you have to find it. For myself, and I don't mean to disparagingly of your location, but when I refer to Rails, like say the Chicago women, or when I was on CODL, it's the Chicago women, or ALA, when I was on the board, there was the Chicago women. And those Chicago women were uplifting. But if you're isolated in a small community, like in central Illinois, or the last man standing. I would not know you, but I like you. I just met you today. But I mean, speaking my language, I mean, I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. But if you're in isolation, who do you reach out to? And who do you reach out to when you don't know about Rails? The information is not filtered down to the lower of the caste system, even though you've got the degree and everything. It's just bond of friendship. It goes decades until they're gone. Possibly. I've not been there that long, but this happened to me. I would not have been in ILA had it not been for, I had a mentor, but at an academic library is a totally different situation where we were all on the same level. There was not that chaos. There was not that behind the scenes after hours camaraderie and bowling mafia. And need I say more?
Bowling mafia?
Even right now, as old as I am, that's why I pursued this, why I'm pursuing this ILA retirees forum, because we have something to offer people that are coming up in the ranks, not people just on Rails or ILA, but anybody that works at a library who wants to know more in friendships. If it wasn't for ILA, I mean, I made friendships, lifelong friendships, and I enjoy being here. I enjoyed meeting many of you. I would never have met my dear friend Tom had it not been for Rails. But how do you break out of that isolation? And I'm sorry if it sounds, as I apologize, I hope it's not attitude because of my wounds and why do you want to even do this? You know, why do you want to, you know, be on this committee or that committee, or you have to drive all the way to Chicago, or we don't have the money to support you. You know, you get these responses and then after you're hit on the head so many times, you know, you kind of go back in your shell. But thank heaven for the kindness of people who've been in ILA and my colleagues at Bradley. I mean, they were so encouraging. And so that's why I think I'm flying off the mouth right now. But
I think the point is well taken, Diane, because it brings it all back to like the very beginning of your career, when you don't even know what you don't know. You don't know you want to be a leader yet. And I think that's where like the most basic networking and communication and connection pieces of specifically what Rails does. But again, zones, all of those things. How do we get our library workers connected to the profession so that they're connecting to each other and building that network from day one when they walk in your building as a baby librarian, and they are
Should already be on the email list.
Exactly. So when they get on the email list, then they start talking to each other and side conversations. And then that builds into a local networking group and feeds right into these kinds of leadership programs. And I think that it just reinforces the importance of that kind of basic connection that Rails can help with getting those new librarians, and all of us who are out there as library directors or librarians in other settings to remind all of our baby librarians to get on the Rails listserv, to show up to the networking meeting.
I just want to pivot us a little bit because I want to hear from you all. Are there specific skills that you think people need to learn in a program like this? I'm definitely hearing about the importance of the cohort, hearing about the importance of having a mentor and a group that you can move forward with. Are there skills in terms of what could be offered in the learning, like that would be really important for a leader?
I'm not a library director, nor do I work at a library, but so don't listen to me. No. So, but what I feel is important for anybody in a leadership position has a lot to do with mental health and how to deal with the public and mental issues that come out of that. It's come up with libraries. It's come up with any schools. I mean, anything that's remotely negative. If you dig all the way down, it starts at mental health. So any kind of thing how to promote positive mental health, how to identify and what to do about it. It's very scary when your frontline staff is, you know, getting screamed at. What do they do? How do you keep them? How do you diffuse the situation without ruining that person's day, you know, and wanting them to change what they do? I mean, you get yelled at like that enough and you don't want to do that anymore. So not that any kind of training is going to fix it, but it always helps to at least open that conversation so people know what to do.
Essentially teaching compassion and empathy to be a decent human being, so that you teach that to a leader, then you would hope that that's how they treat their future employees, staff members, friends, colleagues. But I think the other question in regards to your skills inquiry is, having an understanding that everyone has a different educational level. Not everyone has a degree. Alex and I have discussed this previous. We know colleagues who don't have a college degree, who have missed the opportunity of leading a library because of that degree. We have board members who do not have a college degree or do not have the background to be considered as a director, because board members would say, you know what, if you don't have that degree, we don't feel like you have enough. So for me, it's going to be understanding that there's different educational levels and understanding, so just assume that some people don't have an IMLS. So then are we still teaching the vital criteria of what a library is and how do we serve the public? Are we teaching that basic knowledge of libraries? Are we teaching the compassion, empathy, mental? There's so many ways we can go about it. And then I think the conflict in regards to even the skills is the fact that, are we then coming into Dominican University or U of I while we are teaching these classes? Because again, college right now, universities, it's expensive. And a lot of people are going in a different direction of not wanting to get a degree because they just don't see the worth of it. So then what is Rails trying to say? Are they trying to say, hey, take our leadership course, we think you'd be eligible to get these type of positions? And are those libraries going to be told, hey, Rails is doing these courses that they think they'll be able to lead these libraries? And are we going to get in conflict with Dominican and U of I, where they're going to be like, no, you need a degree because you need to understand the basics? So it's like, how much are we going to be doing on our part? I think that's my concern. It's just like, how deep are we going to go in? But skills wise is an understanding that everyone's educational background is different. And so, and then we also, Rails overall, just like ILA is, we serve so many different types of libraries. Are we only supporting a specific type of library? Or are we supporting all libraries? So it's that kind of question.
Budgeting. Levies and ordinances of any kind. I mean, I could just make a long list.
Like conflict
HVAC?
resolution,
Conflict resolution.
how to fire someone.
Negotiation.
Yep.
This is not the right word for it, but like independent thinking. And by that
Ooh.
I mean libraries attract a lot of rule followers. And I can tell after a very short relationship with someone if they are going to make it as a library leader, if they know when a rule is a locked in stone rule and when a rule is something that can be bent or broken based on.
We've always done it that way.
Mhm.
How to take that big picture and break it down into little steps that the actual staff can do. So you've got, it's that strategic planning where you've got your big vision, but you've got to get it all the way down to the, okay, so what are we going to do today that's going to move us that direction?
Also thinking about this in terms of like all people, not just directors, really helping people get understanding of themselves so that everyone can see how they can be a leader regardless of what their job is or what their personality is or, how it can work for them.
Yes, Gwen.
Oh, also I want an IT class.
Well, if you're gonna get into class, I want a building mechanicals class. Right?
HVAC was
HVAC.
a real pain.
I think it's important for there to be a balance between spending time with people and spending time doing work, like non-staff focused related work, because I feel like a lot of the times the library leaders, you know, they're so steeped in the myriad of responsibilities, you lose time with your team. And to team members, it's incredibly important to see a leader in the library, in the break room, talking to everybody at programs. And it's just really hard to do that. I mean, there's just so much to be done. And so I think a library leader has ultimately, it needs to be a people person, somebody who's really wants to interact with people, because the work is always going to be there, but the connection with the people, I mean, that's only you can do that. You know, you have to be visible in order to be accessible, and if you're not accessible, then people aren't going to connect with you. And so I think that's a really important inherent component to leadership, is to truly want to be around people.
I want to ask this last question just because this is something we've been talking about some. So most of the requests that we receive for this type of leadership program are coming from public libraries. They're talking about the issues of being a library director, who's coming from that. But as Rails, we serve all types of libraries. So our question is, you know, is it important that this type of a program cover a multi-type focus?
I think that
You're here.
I think it is important. I think public libraries are used to asking Rails for things, like academic libraries aren't really used to asking Rails for things, but that doesn't mean that they wouldn't like it, and maybe collaborating with other groups like Harley or SLA or ISLE to get more input on what would be helpful to people from other types of libraries would help make it more appealing to them. Make it more generalizable, because people do move between types of libraries too. It's not all about like, you only are ever going to work in an academic library or a public library.
Gonna say you're already going in the right direction with school libraries, right? Because I mean, that was a big barrier. If you don't get credit for that continuing education, then you're not going to get support going. So yeah, I think that's a great. I don't know anything about special libraries yet. I've only been at one for a month. I certainly think that it would be applicable. I mean, because there's team members in the libraries and universities and special libraries, and someone leading those libraries, and those skill sets are just as important. Some of the things that you mentioned that you were listing off don't necessarily apply to special libraries, but other things do that are probably more common with academic institutions. So I think research. I feel like I've never researched as much. The budgeting component, especially, because just blow your entire budget on one database. So, and if you contract negotiations, kind of like being a solo librarian too, in some ways, like we're a librarian in a size of libraries you were describing, Diane, where if you want to do if you want to participate in leadership opportunities, then you have to be prepared to close the library if you're, or, you know, to have services not available when you're participating. So it's similar to school libraries in that respect, and that there's better timing for certainly applicable.
I want to be sensitive to our time because I know we still have more on the agenda, but I do want to ask if there's any kind of final thoughts around this discussion that anybody wants to share. This has been really helpful for us to kind of hear from you about your thoughts and things we should be considering.
Refreshing. I'm so glad we've had this, you know, been able to address your questions, and it's made me feel good. It's kind of like a purging, because I'm, you know, sharing. But it's something that's, you know, been with me for quite a long time, even before Rails. So.
Any other last thoughts? Thank you all for the discussion. We really appreciate it.
All right. I'm going to call for recess, just because, right? No, we still have more to cover. So I just want to make sure everyone takes a little break. It's going to be a 10-minute break. It is 2:29. We're going to come back at 2:40. We are back from our break. We will now proceed with the board development and best practices in online safety with Wesley Smith. It's always a good word.
I like your tie, Wes.
Thank you. Feel like after COVID, there's just not as many often, reasons to dress up.
Honored, thank you.
Okay. So we have pretty much, we're going to start with the vegetables and then we'll get to the dessert. The meat of it is, cybersecurity. It's pretty much the same as it was last year when we talked about this. That the best practices are still the same best practices, and there are not a whole lot of developments in doing these things any differently. But there's some fun stuff at the end that we can, play around with and take a look at. So, again, one of the biggest threats to our organizations and libraries and a lot of the public sector is social engineering, is people calling up, wanting to be your friend, asking you questions that seem benign and shouldn't be a problem, and then slowly working their way into your organization as if they were a staff member or something of that matter. And libraries are very friendly and very willing to help people. And that is something that in the IT world, we try to discourage sometimes when you're dealing with the outside is you cannot just take every request at face value that they are a simple, patron of the library that's just asking questions. So that is something that we try to, you can be firm, but also be nice, and not just give away any information that someone asks for. Or very commonly like to give away information. That's kind of part of the breed of a librarian, is to share information. Not so much with IT, but and ransomware is usually the goal of these folks, is to hijack your data and take that data and sell it back to you. Like, they have it encrypted. They don't care what your organization does. They may not be interested in actually selling your data to anyone else because no one else may want it. Because most of our data is subject to FOIA. So anybody who wants our data, they can usually ask for it. But all of our data in a single place is also a big target for someone to take from you. And then you don't have your data. And they're like, well, it'd be a shame if your data were to go away and we could probably sell it back to you for, a reasonable amount of Bitcoin. And also it's the services that we provide to our libraries and to our members, and the trust that may be harder to recoup if suddenly we can't provide that to them. That they've been coming to L2 or your website and suddenly that's not a resource that's available to you because a criminal organization has hijacked it and taken it away from you. And that trust might be harder to recoup than any financial losses that we may experience. The best thing to do to prevent this is strong passwords with multi-factor authentication. And not changing passwords. That's been a big kind of a lie that was started in the IT world, and it's just everybody's like, yeah, if I change my password every 3 months, everything's going to be okay. That leads to worse passwords. That leads to your password with a 1 and a 2 and a 3 at the end every 3 months because you're driving nuts by having to change your password every so often. Having a strong password that doesn't change, but is also different, is very important for your security. Software updates, patch management, firewall intrusion detection systems. Some libraries may not be able to afford some of these advanced things, but there are also open source free stuff that if you have a staff member that's interested and curious, which again is also part of the breed of librarian, they can, figure out some of this stuff and play with it. A lot of my first introduction as a kid working in IT was on the weekends, playing with stuff, doing my, enjoying figuring things out. Encrypting your data, regular backups, secure remote access, which means if you have a VPN, that should also be multi-factor authentication. Security awareness training. We do a lot of work, at least quarterly, with Rails staff talking about social engineering and any new threats that come upon the horizon. And continually hammering home that information is important for staff to understand the risks that they are facing. I think I've read a study somewhere of like 92% of most attacks on organizations start out as a social engineering exploit, getting into someone's computer via an email or an instant message. And I'm sure we've all experienced it. You get the text from someone says, "Hey, are you coming to my party?" And you're like, "I don't know this number. who are you?" "Oh, I'm some so-and-so. You met me." And it's totally just a scammer trying to chat you up and get information about you for their exploits. And then also, regularly assessing your risk. Having an outside organization look at you and kind of vetting the work that your staff has done to make sure that the equipment that you've got and the settings and the practices that you have are working and keeping, your organization safe. Incident response, developing incident response plans, importance of communication and transparency. If you have an incident, don't try to hide it. That's the worst thing you can do because it's always going to come out. And then again, you're losing that trust with your patrons and your members. And then testing your response and continually improving it over time as you see holes or new things come up on the horizon. Employee training, we talked a little bit about that. Recognizing phishing, social engineering, reporting security incidents. You may, there was just some kid in here, who came over and started messing around at the service desk. Well, you should report that to IT. Creating a culture of cybersecurity where staff is aware of these vectors of attack. Modern cybersecurity tools and solutions, the investment in technology. Again, that's sometimes a hard sell because these specific things don't add flash to the library, don't add excitement necessarily, but they're important to make sure that your organization is protected because a ransomware attack will add a lot of flash that you don't want to your organization. And again, these are all, checking out your vendors, making sure that your vendors are on the up and up, not doing any, kind of scammy things. If it seems too good to be true, it most likely is. And then this is a YouTube video that I put out last year from DEF CON, a conference that we attend in IT, about how to use this tool that I use to fake people's voices. Last year, I took about 10 minutes of Monica speaking off of YouTube and was able to create a model to then basically take my voice and turn it into hers.
Creepy.
So
Really creepy.
I'll play a couple of those, just so that. All right. So.
Hi, this is Monica Harris.
Yeah. Okay. This is me doing my best Monica impression, just my straight voice.
Hi, this is Monica Harris. I need you to go over to Best Buy and pick me up $300 iTunes gift cards so I can give them out at this conference. Just send me the codes via my email. I'm using my personal Gmail.
And then this is.
Hello, this is Wesley Smith. I'm a 6'3" nerdy IT guy. Hello, this is Wesley Smith. I'm a 6'3" nerdy IT guy.
copy the wrong ones.
It's okay, Wesley, you can still play.
Hey, this is Monica. I'm at ILA today.
Yeah, anyway, this is also Monica being the nerdy IT guy.
Hello, this is Wesley Smith. I'm a 6'3" nerdy IT guy, and this is just to show you how easy it is to impersonate someone else's voice.
Does sound like. It
With
has
that little southern.
stations, the
Then I
way.
have a nice message here for everybody.
Happy to be here today to talk to the Rails board. A really great board. Some would say the best board ever. A very smart board. Everyone is saying it. The other day, a man walked up to me, tears streaming down of his eyes. Big, strong man. He said the Rails board is the best board he's ever seen.
Wow. But it is extreme. I mean, and then there's Monica saying the same thing.
Happy to be here today to talk to the Rails board. A really great board. Some would say the best board ever. A very smart board. Everyone is saying it. The other day, a man walked up to me, tears streaming down of his eyes. Big, strong man. He said the Rails board is the best board he's ever seen.
So again, there's also video here I wanted to share that is a deep fake of Morgan Freeman that is.
I'm not Morgan Freeman, and what you see is not real. Well, at least in contemporary terms, it is not. What if I were to tell you that I am not even a human being? Would you believe me? What is your perception of reality? Is it the ability to capture, process, and make sense of the information our senses receive? If you can see, hear, taste, or smell something, does that make it real? Or is it simply the ability to feel? I would like to welcome you to the era of synthetic reality. Now, what do you see?
That was a long-term, render that they had to, but they used a person speaking and overlaid Morgan Freeman on top of them. And that's how most of this is done. And it has gotten to the point now where graphics cards are fast enough to do that in real time. So you can have somebody on a Zoom conference, real time, look like someone else, sound like someone else, and you, unless they're asking you something that's totally inappropriate, might not know that that's not Monica or that's not. And there are laws out there in terms of doing these deep fakes. Part of the reason why I haven't really gotten into deep faking anybody or actually, doing the video editing and the real time stuff is that there are, good laws that have been put in place to kind of stop some of this from happening. But you have to question everything, as X-Files would say. Trust no one.
Yeah, our insurance broker at the Lyra renewal was talking about our cyber liability policy and how important it was for all of the things that you just talked about, Wes. They used an example of someone who was on a Zoom call with what he thought was the rest of the leadership team for the company, who asked him to make a bank transfer. And it turned out that everybody else on the call was a deep fake.
Yeah.
And it was a major cybersecurity loss. So it's out there.
I've actually gotten, well, not since you updated the email system with but before that, the Duo thingy, it was Alex. He sent me an email asking for some information, and he never sends me an email asking me for anything. So I went and I emailed Alex and I said, "Did you just email me something?" And he said, "No." So then I send it right to IT right away. I forward it to IT, and so it happens even on our own emails.
We have a lot of that happen
Yeah.
and we've trained people to, because it's, you can't stop it. You know, you can't completely stop it. We have impersonation, you know, stuff out there to stop emails coming through saying they're Monica. They find ways to get through. And I find it especially unnerving is that they watch our website and see when new employees get hired.
Oh,
And they
really?
target them.
Gosh.
They target new employees specifically. I know when Sharon became finance director, she started getting all kinds of emails from people trying to impersonate Monica and other staff members. So
Wes, can you describe how Rails employees use their personal cell phones for work business?
really the only thing that we use, that staff use their personal phones for is checking email and authentication, two-factor duo authentication. We also give them the opportunity to use a fob if they don't want to use their cell phone. So there's no requirement to use your cell phone within the organization. And we don't allow any personal devices onto the network or the Wi-Fi. That's what we have, the public Wi-Fi. We're also going to be adding a password to our public Wi-Fi. We had some outside folks use our Wi-Fi at one of our other locations to do some copyright infringement. So we have to add a password to our public Wi-Fi to prevent that. It was on off hours, weekends, at night, you know, but they hung out in the woods and connected to our Wi-Fi.
My goodness.
I wonder how many people do copyright infringement on public library Wi-Fis.
Probably a lot.
Yeah, tons. Yeah, that's not even a question. That's just.
I got an email, I got a letter from HBO a million years ago saying that we were, you know, torrenting Game of Thrones. And I was like, well, it wasn't me.
But as providing that service, we're still responsible, and our services can cut us off if we don't take some action to prevent that from happening.
I just ignored it. Like, we were one of millions.
Yeah.
IPs that were.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I was the one that checked out like 30 CDs when I was a kid. And wait, thank you so much, Wesley.
Yeah, absolutely.
Does anyone have any questions, comments? Just quick question. Do you by any chance send tests like dummy to see who actually opens email?
So we did do that.
You don't have to name anyone.
Yeah.
And I'm already looking at everyone's faces. They're like, wait, what?
But we haven't done a whole lot of email phishing, but we did do some USB drops at some of our locations, and staff were really concerned that people had lost their USB drives. We had no one stick them in their computers because we had done training to make sure that that didn't happen. We also had some staff feel that it was very intrusive for us to have done this kind of, you know, security testing on them, that they felt like, you know, like they can trust no one.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the feeling that we want, is that they should be very skeptical of free things and things that are too good to be true.
It was interesting. My job when I worked, my job did every week, we got some kind of a phishing email, and they kept track, you know, and at first, you know, everybody was like, here we go again. But it really, really got you used to seeing emails that weren't right. And then like, it was like so normal for me to like, okay, now this one's a phishing, that when my mom would say, oh, I got a thing from Amazon and I'm supposed to click here and my payment, my credit card isn't good anymore. And I'm like, don't click on the email. How could you not know that, Mom? But you know, it's like, because I had to go through all of this every week kind of thing, it might not be a bad thing to do.
You have to realize that questioning things, people shouldn't get upset just because staff maybe double checks on something or questions the validity of their request. Because of the world and the nature of the things we live in, we can't trust a lot of the information that comes to us.
Even better if they do click the email, Ryan's voice comes up. Hey, you that up. I hope you're listening, Ryan. Thank you again, Wesley. That was seriously, that was good. I'm always looking forward to hearing Monica's voice from you, I guess. I don't know. Every year. All right, let's move on to board member reports. Yes, this is the time where board members can share what is happening with their libraries. Please, everyone.
Oh.
Yes, Karen, go for it.
Since 2018, we had a grant for parking lot, and then things happened, and we finally got the parking lot, and people are parking in it. I laid down on it like this. I'm just so excited, and it's just been so nice. People can there's 2 parking lots. It's just great. And once you worked on something for so long, it's just so nice when it's done.
Yes, congratulations, Karen.
Well deserved as a person who has used that parking lot. It's nice that there's another parking lot.
Get more space. So I have a thing. So the Northern Illinois University Libraries, this week, we won an award for outstanding department contributions to international education on our campus. Which was great. International education. If anyone didn't realize that.
Done. Well, at my school, I was thrilled on Wednesday. The ending portion of my last year's My Library is Grant finally went up on the wall. 14-foot mural designed by 12 students and then applied in vinyl panels and heat sealed onto the very boring white brick wall that used to be there. So it's very, very colorful and a good welcome to our library. I was standing in the hallway most of the day when it was going up, just admiring it. And all the students would walk by and 9 out of 10 of them would say, "Did you just paint that?" No, I'm not that talented, but your classmates designed it. So thank you for that grant.
Want to share? No? All right. All right, the excitement, guys. Thank you. Our next board meeting will be on Friday, January 24th, 2025. Can you believe it? Mm. Well, let's not talk about that, the other part. But please note that there's no Rails board meeting scheduled for December 2024, unless you're in the executive committee. I believe we're going to be meeting for potential.
You have 2 meetings set.
Correct. Potential members to join us for interviews. Included on the January agenda will be a Find More Illinois update with Barb Miller and Biz Lindsay Ryan will give an overview of EDI topics for libraries. And that's it. Hold on a second. So I'm going to close this. It's 3:04.
Need a motion?
Can I get a motion? Thank you.
I'll move.
Wait, the board will now move. You have to read that.
Do we have to?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're just, okay. I didn't know if we had to get everyone. Okay. The board will now move into closed session to discuss matters pertaining to closed session minutes as per 5 Illinois compiled statutes, chapter 120, paragraph 2, section 2C21, which states, all right, exceptions, a public body may hold closed meetings to consider the following subjects. 2, collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees. 21, discussion of minutes of meeting lawfully closed under this act, whether for purposes of approval by the body of the minutes or semi-annual review of the minutes as mandated by section 2.06. This is where it comes. May I have a motion and a second to move into closed session? Thank you, Emily.
Second, Karen.
You are awesome, Karen. Emily, will you please call roll?
Jennifer Cutshall.
Here.
Nipum Grail. Here. Greg Gregory. Here. Diane Hollister. Here. Amanda Kowalski. Here. Julie Millivac. Here. Emily Porter. Here. Alex Mancina. Yes. Karen Voidick.
Yes.
Stephanie Yanikowski.
Yes.
Monica Caldecott.
Yes.
Jean Carroll. Yes. Renee Leva.
Yes. Thank you. Have a nice 2 seconds. Thank you, Galen. All right. Think about this for a second. We're gonna, following up our closed session, our 6-month review of closed session minutes. May I have a motion and a second regarding the status of the closed session minutes for January 26, 2024 to open or remain closed? How do you want to work this?
I'd like to make a motion to open the last two,
There you go.
May 24th, 2024 and June 21st, 2024.
All other closed session, it's privileged.
Second. Emily, you're a keeper. Thank you, Alex.
I agree.
Okay, Emily, will you please call roll?
So wait, is this a vote? So like,
Yeah, or do you want it?
Now we're voting.
so if it's not roll,
The
then,
motion, then you say no.
okay. Okay,
Roll call vote.
a roll call vote. Okay, go ahead.
John Gregory.
Yes.
Diane Hollister. Amanda Qualcy. Julie Melvick.
Yes.
Emily Porter. Alex Vanstina.
Yes.
Karen Voidic.
No.
Catherine Yanikowski.
Yes.
Monica Caldecott.
Yes.
Jean Carroll. Jennifer Cutchell.
Yes.
Doyle.
Yes.
Renee Leva.
Yes. All right, hey, we're almost there. Hey, you all have a safe and healthy Thanksgiving holiday. That includes you, Sam, Ryan, and Galen. Always nice to see you guys around. I hope you have a really good time with friends and family. Do not drink too much eggnog. I know that's Christmas, but some people do drink it during, or some.
Don't tell me what to do, Renee.
All right. Thank you all for your attendance. I adjourn this meeting at 3:48 PM. Go to your friends and family.